Testing.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening. It's great to see all of you here tonight at the community building. The City of Southport Board of Aldermen special called meeting, June 2nd, 2026, is now called to order. Thank you to those in attendance and to those watching remotely. Welcome. Our invocation tonight, I will give the invocation, and it will have a historic tone to it. And this will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand. June 2nd, 1930, Dozier Hospital opened its doors. And we're here tonight as stewards of that great city. And there are people here tonight who are related to the Dozier family. So I would like to have a moment of silence for that family and for those citizens who had the courage and the foresight and the will to bring forth a hospital and health care to their community 96 years ago. So a moment of silence for that family and those people. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I think Dr. Dozier would be happy that we all remembered him tonight. So thank you. Thank you for that. Our agenda tonight is the public hearing for the local historic district overlay map amendment and standards. This is different from the town hall that we had last week. We had an excellent town hall. That was more of a back and forth between staff and our citizens. Tonight is a public hearing, so I declare the public hearing open, and I will call on our city manager, Noah Saldo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as outlined in your rules of procedure backed by state law, and as customary at all of your public hearings, public comment sessions, each member of the public will have 3 minutes to offer their comments for the board to consider on this matter. I will call upon Planning Services Director Meehan to give the official recommendation, followed by the city clerk, who will begin calling names. The clerk has several letters to read, so she will intermingle those between a spoken word here and those letters she's received. Ms. Meehan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Board of Aldermen. Tonight, we're holding our second public hearing for the consideration of a local historic district overlay. The first advertised public hearing was held on July 10th of 2025. And since that time, there have been multiple special meetings, regular meetings of the Historic Preservation Commission, a joint meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission and the Board of Aldermen to listen and take comment from the public, and in a way to make amendments to the standards that we are also considering this evening to make sure that they are meeting the mark for both the a balance between what the city needs and the state standards are requiring. So this evening, the final revisions were made at the April meeting of the May meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Those with what you have in front of you this evening. And tonight we are having our public hearing, and the HPC has formally recommended approval of the historic district overlay, as well as the standards as they are presented this evening. So with that, we'll start our public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Meehan. Madam Clerk.
Susan Delaney. My name is Susan Delaney. I live at 304 West Street. I appreciate the time to speak to you guys tonight. There are a lot of people that have come before me that have given you a lot of very compelling reasons to vote no for this. And there are a lot more tonight that are going to come behind me. So it will surprise you to know that I am not here tonight to ask you to change your minds, because I am fairly certain that at least a few of you have already decided that you're going to vote yes. What I am asking you to do is not change your mind, but change your vote. If we were allowed to vote in this town, this group here tonight would overwhelmingly vote no. We're not allowed to do that. What we are allowed to do is vote for you, the aldermen, to represent us. And that's what I'm asking you to do tonight, to put aside your personal preferences and represent us and do the right thing and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you like to read the first letter?
My name is Davis Herring Jr. I live outside the city limits today, but my family still owns property in Southport's so-called historic district. I was unable to fully express my thoughts at the last town hall meeting because I became emotional. I was born and raised in Southport. This town is my heritage. The property I own has been in my family since the 1800s. My sister, Measy Child, often talked about selling our property so she could buy a mountain home for her family. I was always against the idea. Then I fell in love with Kansas and finally agreed to sell the Ships Chandler restaurant, now known as Oliver's. We put the property up for sale, and tragically, Measy passed away. Just 2 weeks later, it was under contract. Because of my own stubbornness, she never had the opportunity to enjoy the mountain home she had dreamed about for so many years. If I had listened to her sooner, I would not be writing this letter today. Someone else would be. Now the mayor says he doesn't want division among the city, when in fact it is worse now than it ever was due to this HPC. I have been here 78 years, and our town looks better now than ever due to the new residents and the old residents taking immense pride in their homes and yards. Without 105 pages of restrictions, this HPC, in my opinion, would lose even more tax base. Any property owner with a one-story building should immediately go to the Brunswick County tax assessor and request at least a 50% reduction if the restrictions being pushed are approved. I am against a revision of any sort, as it would most likely be changed back to the original document in a short time. The city of Southport does not need to lose any more tax base. Thank goodness for Senator Bill Rabon and Representative Charlie Miller for appropriating funds for much needed improvements for the city. The city would be in trouble without them. The city is failing not to notify their property owners of changes, for example, tree ordinances, height restrictions of commercial buildings, and the proposed historic district overlay. It is a law the city has to notify all property owners that are affected by written notice, which has not been done. Another lawsuit. I attended 2 HPC meetings, and I will never attend another. In my last meeting, 2 men whom I greatly respect, Dr. Kurt Sheets and Mr. Paul Swinson, both were rudely gabbled to be silenced, and they were told they were out of order. These 2 men have greatly contributed to the growth of Southport with their businesses. They should never be treated this way. Is this what the city has come to? In closing, when asked about a potential lawsuit, the city manager stated that the city carries liability insurance. But who pays these attorneys? The taxpayers. I wonder if some of the aldermen understand that they could be sued individually, and it has been done in this county before. Davis Herring Jr. Oh, I just did it.
Good job. All right, Madam Clerk.
Mimi Vargo.
Good evening, Mayor, Aldermen, and all my friends here in Southport. Whether you're here for it or against it, I hope we can still be friends. I am here tonight. Let me just say, I live at 230 North Caswell within the boundaries of the proposed district. I'm here tonight to respectfully oppose the creation of the proposed historic preservation overlay district. I don't want to focus my time here talking about historic preservation or whether the proposed regulations are the right solution for Southport right now. Many others will speak to that tonight. To be clear, though, I am unequivocally opposed to the proposal we are here to discuss. The concern I want to raise tonight runs much deeper than the content of the regulation or how it will be implemented. It is about representation, fairness, and the consent of the people who will be regulated. From the beginning of the process, many residents within the proposed district have felt that their voices were not adequately represented. The commission that developed these recommendations was largely composed of individuals who live outside the proposed district. There was no requirement that a meaningful number of commission members would come from within the area that would ultimately be subject to the regulations should they be passed. Early in the process, I asked why there was not a minimum level of representation required from district residents. I was told that not enough qualified applicants from the district had come forward and it would be hard to fill those positions. However, I later learned that multiple applicants from within the district had in fact applied and were not selected. That raises serious questions about whether the people most affected by these regulations were given a genuine seat at the table. I also attended many of the commission meetings throughout the process. In most cases, public participation was limited to comments at the beginning of meetings with little opportunity to meaningfully dialogue between residents and commission members. Those who would be regulated were able to speak, but were not truly heard. A process that imposes new restrictions on private property should actively engage affected property owners, not simply receive comments and choose behind closed doors whether to do anything about them. While the commission made a number of revisions to the proposed regulations based on citizen input, it never truly considered whether other approaches could achieve its stated goals. The residents of the proposed district are not merely stakeholders in this decision. They are the people whose homes, property rights, and future choices will be directly affected by it. Tonight, I ask you to consider a simple question. If the majority of the property owners who will be governed by these regulations oppose them, shouldn't their consent matter? In North Carolina, other overlay.
Thank you. Okay, next letter, Madam Clerk.
To the Honorable Mayor Joe Pat Hatem and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Southport, I am writing to express my vehement opposition to the proposed historic district overlay. And I request that this letter be read out loud and placed into record. I own several pieces of property in the 100 block of West Bay Street. While I currently reside in Brunswick County, I was born and raised here. Before I was old enough for my official EMT certification, I joined the Southport Rescue Squad. I have worked in our family's local businesses, including a motel operating continuously since the 1950s. Many moved to Southport for its historic charm, but they are leaving out of the most important factor, the people, the real Southport. Southport is not a collection of buildings, it is a culture. In 1954, Hurricane Hazel completely demolished downtown, yet the town rebuilt because the people lived on. Neighbors didn't pass regulations to prevent a neighbor from building a house they deemed ugly. Instead, that homeowner needed help, the neighbors pitched in. If these proposed regulations had been in effect decades ago, the positive growth of our waterfront business district simply would not have happened. The phrase, "Don't change Southport, let Southport change you," was never about bricks and boards. It was about our way of life. Now that way of life is under threat. The vast majority of property owners within the proposed district have stated that these regulations are deeply harmful. To ignore their pleas is unconscionable. It is akin to a doctor listening to a patient complaining of crushing chest pain and responding, "I don't believe you," or "Stop complaining, I've had worse." Mr. Mayor, as a fellow physician, I know you understand that to ignore a patient's clear distress is a violation of our most sacred oath, to do no harm. Our citizens are crying out in pain. We cannot turn a deaf ear to them. Our people are already hurting from skyrocketing insurances, taxes, and inflation. Adding administrative and financial pain right now is a terrible idea. Mr. Mayor, you stated you do not want to tear this town apart. If these regulations are adopted, that is exactly what will happen. As we approach our nation's 250th birthday, I cannot believe we are considering requiring certificates of appropriateness just for citizens to maintain their own property. My dear mother and her many ancestors before would have been aboard to learn that such a piece of legislation was being considered. Even more so, that one of its majority champions was the person selected to replace her on the board. Do not divide this town. The buildings of Southport do not need protecting. Its citizens do. Do what is right for the real Southport. Respectively submitted, Carter John Herring Childs, MD.
Madam
I'm getting
Clerk,
good at this.
next.
Kathy Dudley.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Kathy Dudley, and I live at 105 North Caswell Avenue. I am opposed to the formation of the Historic Overlay District for the following reasons. First, the exclusion of key lots in the yacht basin. The original National Register District included all of the yacht basin, but the final local historic district excludes it, which includes some of the largest undeveloped lots in the city. I have heard explanations that it no longer has historic value or that it can be incorporated later. Neither argument makes sense. On page 11, the yacht basin is listed as one of the historic vistas to be preserved. So why leave it out of the historic district? Furthermore, why should the homeowners on Westmore and South Caswell have to follow 100 pages of historic requirements and require an additional COA from the Historic Commission, but the development of the yacht basin would be governed only by the UDO? Second, there have been recent Facebook postings saying that if this doesn't pass, we face a future of ugly modern structures being built next to quaint Southport cottages. But that could happen anyway. We could have large, ugly homes in the yacht basin. The homes on Brown Street, the current cutoff for the district, could back up to large, ugly homes. We could be ringed by large, ugly homes with that. We could have a future where the homeowners in downtown Southport are subjected to burdensome regulations while the rest of the city is plowed under and replaced with large, ugly homes. Don't add an historic district, fix the UDO. Or better yet, Southport is only 4 square miles. Why not make all of it a historic district? See what the citizens feel about that. Third, the standards of this document have potential to result in significant financial burdens to homeowners. For example, much of the emphasis in the section on windows and doors is on preserving the original doors. We would all love to do that. The people who live in this district go out of their way to preserve and maintain and do what they can. But a focus on repairing can be very, very costly. But this section is filled with phrases like repair rather than replace, using accepted preservation methods, and being inappropriate to remove windows rather than repair. Curiously, we live in a hurricane-prone area, but hurricane-grade windows are not even mentioned in this document. Yet it would seem the use of hurricane windows could help preserve overall structures, which purportedly is the aim of the historic district. Finally, I believe one of the main reasons we are here tonight with the city clearly divided is because there was not enough voices from within the proposed district represented on the commission. I believe the commission members worked hard.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next letter.
Good evening, Mayor Hatem, Board of Aldermen, and citizens of Southport. Due to a personal matter, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. My name is Catherine Huffham. I reside at 40 Forest Oaks Drive. I do not live in the historic district at this time, but own a home at 414 West Street with my brother and sister that has been in our family since being built in 1913. My family has lived in the historic district since 1792, and I have lived in Southport for 69 years, except for a career move to Raleigh for several years, and then moving outside of the historic district in 2005. I currently serve on the Historic Preservation Commission, appointed in July 2025. I am sending this letter in support of the proposed historic district overlay and the historic district design standards guidelines. I believe they are essential to preserving the historic character and identity of our community. There seems to be a misunderstanding about what historic design standards guidelines are. They are not HOA rules. They do not dictate how people live their lives, what color they paint a room inside their home, or they enjoy their property. Historic design standards guidelines are simply guidelines that help ensure that new construction, major renovation, and redevelopment are compatible with the historic character that has defined Southport for generations. Southport is not just another coastal town. It is a historic fishing village that has rich maritime heritage and tree-lined streets with a mix of coastal Victorian homes, traditional frame cottages, and Greek revival styles with welcoming porches, Southport bows, and a scale and character that people travel from all over the country to experience. Once the character is lost, it can never be recreated. We have seen in the past and continue to see today historic homes and buildings being demolished and replaced with structures that could be found in any affluent coastal community. While these homes and buildings may be beautiful in their own right, they often do not reflect the architectural traditions or historic scale that make Southport special. We need standards and guidelines in place to protect what is left. Without thoughtful design, standards, and guidelines, the gradual loss of historic character occurs one property at a time. Each individual project may seem insignificant, but collectively, they can transform an entire community. Over time, Southport risks becoming a town that looks like everywhere else instead of the place we have always cherished. Historic design standards guidelines are not intended to stop progress. They are intended to guide it. They help ensure that growth and investment occur in a way that respects the history, culture, and visual character that define our town. Many of the people who oppose these standards and guidelines today are doing so because they fear excessive regulation. I understand these concerns. However, preserving Southport's, I tried.
Very good. Thank you. Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Rich Alt.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rich Alt, and I live at 6165 Cottage Creek Road, which is in the city limits, but like the majority of the HPC people, I do not live in the target area. I have 3 points that I'd like to bring up. One is the downzoning part. It's been brought up 1,000 times, and it's fallen on deaf ears each time. The legislation that talks about downzoning does not specifically exclude historic district. So if the legislators wanted it to be excluded, they would have put it in there. There's also had several years to go back and review to see if that was an unintended missed thing, and they did not go back. Every one of our state elected officials knows about this issue, and that has never been brought up to change that statute to allow or to exclude the historic district. The other part is 80% of the lot owners have asked in writing for this not to be done. When you have an 80-20 vote and you vote against the 80%, it certainly shows hubris. The next part is actually has to do with what we were told at the mayor's workshop, mayor's town hall. I apologize, sir. Was that we were supposed to have full faith in the quasi-judicial group that's going to be put together. These people are going to do everything perfectly well because you can have faith in government for doing that. So let's just talk about some of the things that we have had faith in this government. This past Memorial Day, well, first of all, if you went to the HBC meetings, you would have seen that every month, the administrative side of this was a disaster. Every month, things that were changed, that were supposed to be changed, were not changed. Every month, things that were in conflict were never changed. There's a reason why it went on for 4 years, is because the admin side of this was disaster. I was embarrassed to sit there and watch that happen. And these are the same people who are going to be the first person you're going to meet every time you have an inquiry is the same group of people. This past Memorial Day, I was sitting at the American Legion on 9th Street, and I was reminded by 2 women there that they had come before the government of Southport and asked to be able to use their alleyways. And they both were rejected, soundly rejected, and nobody spent $50,000 of taxpayers' money to inquire about the whole issue as we have done recently. About 3 months ago, give or take, we had 2 gentlemen in here who had been given notices that they had to fix their homes immediately or they were going to be torn down. So some people get those notices, and other people who have houses that have been abandoned for over 2 years have no water, no electricity, no interior walls, and a piece of plywood set over the door. Those people are allowed to be able to move on. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please read the next letter.
My name is Jim Lawson. I live at 222 Caswell Avenue. My wife, Gibby, and I moved to Southport in 1998 to get away from the congestion of traffic in Atlanta. There were also issues within the community we lived in there that they were polarizing. Finally, we wanted to be closer to the coast to do our business. We looked at the Wilmington area, Carolina Beach, Oak Island, before finally selecting Southport. We've lived at the Caswell address for 14 years. We're now looking at the same traffic issues in a much smaller space, and there is a polarizing effect. The historic district push came about the same time our physical and my cognitive issues surfaced. I didn't put too much stock in it. It didn't make sense. Most old timers have said it comes up but never goes away. I've tried to read as much as possible on the computer, but there is simply too much. I went through one section that was 100 pages and then found more. Finally, using AI, I found that there is 200 pages or more total. To get that many pages of legal text, there have got to be some real issues. One document addressed benefits of a historic district, but I see none. We signed a letter some time ago against the idea. Seems there were quite a few names, but I remember someone said that there was not much opposition. Where did all the signs come from? Who originally proposed the project? Did that person or persons live there? How many of the active members of the committee live in the district? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next, Madam Clerk.
Lane Cook.
Good evening. I'm Lane Cook. I live at 306 North Atlantic Avenue. I'm here to support the establishment of the Southport District and the Southport Preservation Commission. And I want to protect and preserve my historic neighborhood. When my husband bought our cottage in 1995, 31 years ago, we thought it was in a designated historical preservation district because there was an official looking plaque on our front porch, which said that it was built in 1910. And we chose a historic house to buy on purpose. We were glad to think, based on that plaque, that we would have the preservation protection that we wanted. We found out quickly, of course, that the plaque did not mean that. It simply identified the family that had lived there for 80 years and the date it was built. Over the 31 years I've lived on that block, some owners have been there for generations and the houses have stayed the same, and some houses have been sold. But I feel very lucky that the newer owners have admired and respected the historic character of our neighborhood, and that's reflected in their homes. But I say I'm lucky because I believe it's been luck up to this point. During that 31 years, Southport has grown from 2,600 people to over 4,200 people, and it continues to grow quickly. The community memory of the families who lived for generations in the historic homes in downtown Southport is fading, and the memory of the history of those homes is fading. Currently on my block, one house is for sale and one house is in need of rebuilding after a fire. I'm an optimistic person, but I really wish there was a historic preservation district to protect our very special neighborhood. It would only take one poor decision on one house to make our block look very different and much less special and historic. Over the last 2 years, Southport and its citizens have put a great deal of effort, resources, and community support into protecting and preserving an important part of our historic heritage, and that's Franklin Square Park. It was seen by many as a way to preserve an irreplaceable historic asset. Protecting and preserving the historic homes that surround Franklin Square Park seem to be even more important than that effort.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear Mayor and Board of Aldermen, my name is Jack Hamilton and I live at 114 North Caswell Avenue in the Historic District. I have lived full-time in downtown Southport for 5 years and our home was built in 1912. It took us 2 years to find our historic home, and from the minute we opened the door, we knew it was the perfect home for us. Its character and charm were what we had been looking for, and we are proud historic district owners. I am against the historic district overlay as it is currently drafted. As a real estate professional for over 36 years, I believe that many of the proposed rules infringe upon the fundamental rights of homeowners and should not be passed. It bothers me that some people who do not even live in the historic district are trying to impose rules on those of us who do. I did not purchase a home in an HOA-controlled community, and I feel that trying to impose these new regulations on those of us who live in the historic district after it has existed and sustained for 230 years is wrong. The majority of the homeowners that purchase homes in the historic district do so because they want to keep the quaint and historic feel from the past, and therefore they continue to care for their homes in the same manner. So, in addition to this overlay infringing on property owners' rights, it is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. All the Board of Aldermen and the mayor need to do is take a ride around the historic district and see all the signs posted in opposition to this new overlay proposal, and they will see that at least 95% of us are against the new proposal. As a representative of these citizens, I urge you to vote no against this overlay. Jack Hamilton.
Next speaker.
James Carroll.
Good evening. James Carroll, 202 West Nash. Betsy and I own multiple properties in the historic district, but I want to focus on one, which is 116 North Howe Street. This is the Ports of Call building that we renovated the exterior of last year. So I took a look at the standards to see if what we did last year would be allowed under the current proposed guidelines. And we added cornice across the top of the building, dental molding trim across the first floor of the building, Southport bows over the exterior doorways, and half columns on the side of each door. Those would all be disallowed by standard 2.2.7. We painted the masonry. That is disallowed by 2.3.9. We put gooseneck lights across the top of the building, probably would be allowed by 1.3.1 if it meets the congruence test. We tried to keep the front entry doors because they were historic. However, code would not allow that. We added a porch on the rear of the building for the tenants to access the apartment. That faces another street, which is IAM Street, making it a front-facing porch. That would be disallowed by standard 2.5.8. That's 90% of what we did to the building. We wouldn't be able to do it if this passes. Are we better off having a faded brick veneer building with cinder block siding, or are we better off with what's there now? We have Alderman here who owns a home who's beautifully renovated it. And if she were to do that after this passed, some of the things that she did would not be allowed. However, it's a great example of what we should be doing in Southport to preserve homes. I mentioned congruence test earlier, so I'm going to get into the weeds for a quick second here. Everybody's going to probably fall asleep. But people that are for this document have told us, don't worry, exceptions are going to be allowed. You can make these changes if it's congruent with your neighbor and compatible. However, congruence is both legally and practically impossible to prove with certainty. There's always subjectivity in determining congruence, even among the most ardent experts. Congruence will be determined by whoever's appointed to the HPC at the time you make your application. So the design standards say new additions must be compatible in scale and massing. So let's do a quick congruence test. Someone owns a cottage. They want to add a rear addition. It's 20% of the volume of the house. Is that congruent? I think it is. I think most people would agree it is. What if it's 40%? Is it congruent now? How about 60%? Is that congruent? Different people are going to say different things. This is going to follow the same playbook that every regulatory structure follows. After the first testy appeal or legal challenge to a major COA, the HPC would become more rigid over time. The so-called exceptions to congruence will no longer be allowed because the city will be scared of potential liability. This is how it always works in bureaucracy. So the standards will become absolute to protect the city legally, and congruence will have nothing to do with it. Thank you.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
For all of you who care, those who grew up here, those who chose to live here, all who saw the charm, the warmth, and the beauty of our town, it's time. Time to come together to protect what little we have left. I don't care what religion you are, don't care who you voted for. I care for this beloved town whose very heart is being ripped out. This is not a mandate nor a POA proposal. This is a set of guidelines, suggestions. No one will tell you what color to paint your home, what you can have in your yard. Instead, there will be suggestions for keeping the character of our town intact. Help us listen, learn, and join the effort before we are nothing but a giant shopping mall and no place to park. Thank you, Stuart Kalari.
Okay. Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Betsy Carroll.
I'm Betsy Carroll, 202 West Nash. James and I own 110, 112, and 308 East Nash and 116 North Howe. We have a vested interest in this issue. Please listen. We all love Southport, whether your family has been here for generations or you fell in love with it more recently. We all care about the story these streets, the waterfront, and our old buildings tell. But this debate over the HPC isn't about who loves our history and who wants to ruin it. It's about a fundamental disagreement on what Southport's true character actually is and who is best suited to look after it. I know the city leaders are looking at a few design outliers to justify these sweeping new rules, but passing massive blanket regulations to fix a couple of isolated property disputes is a knee-jerk reaction. Worse than that, it completely misreads the history we are trying to save. I want to be clear, I genuinely appreciate the passion of the people pushing for historic preservation. However, we have to recognize the difference between a shared community value and a government mandate. If you want to live in a neighborhood where every shutter width and trim detail is locked into a specific era, we already have a great tool for that. It's called an HOA, which is a voluntary private contract. But a living, breathing city is not a master planned subdivision. Our local government shouldn't be forcing the hyper-restrictive rules of a private gated community onto independent property owners. Neighbors shouldn't wake up to find out the city has retroactively slapped HOA-style restrictions on land their families have owned, adapted, and poured their own hard-earned money into for decades or generations. If Southport had stayed rigidly trapped in time, it would still be a poor 19th century fishing village made of seasonal shanties and dirt roads. Your town survived because it always evolved to meet the demands of its people. Look at the historic families of this community. Lines like my family, Harrelson, Brinkman, Lachlan, Ross, Price, Davis, Stanley, Hickman, McKeithen, Tunstall, and others. Spencer, Harper, Gauze, Dozier. I love it. Dozier, Herring, Potter, and so on. The structures they built survived because we adapted them. When a family grew or a downtown business needed to expand, the architecture shifted to meet the moment. Change is the exact engine that allowed Southport to progress beyond the incredibly difficult eras of its founding into the welcoming community we have today. And frankly, look at how the irony of the city trying to police aesthetics. While private property owners are facing more and more scrutiny, our street corners are being cluttered up with the modern protruding utility hubs, empty, neglected public dispensers left over from COVID, and bright, redundant directional signage. We don't need the city creating visual clutter while simultaneously telling private citizens how to style their property. Thank you.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
I am writing as a resident of Southport to express my concern regarding the proposal to establish a historical society that would define and potentially expand what is considered a historic area in our town. First, I want to acknowledge and appreciate the intention behind preserving the history and character of our community. Our town's charm and identity are important to all of us. However, I am concerned that the creation of a formal historical designation, especially one that mandates changes or imposes additional regulations, may have unintended consequences for residents. Our town, as it exists today, reflects a balance of history, individuality, and personal freedom. Many residents have made their home here because of the balance. Introducing new rules that dictate how properties would appear, be maintained, or be modified could limit homeowners' freedom of expression and place financial or practical burdens on them. In particular, I am concerned about the potential loss of personal choice in how property is maintained or improved, increased regulations that may affect property values or future plans, the risk of altering the very character that makes our town unique by imposing uniform standards. Preservation is important, but it should not come at the cost of flexibility, individual rights, and organic character that has developed over time. Many residents value the ability to care and express themselves through their properties without additional oversight. I respectfully ask that you carefully consider the long-term implications of this proposal. Our community is already special as it is, and many of us would like to see the preserved in a way respects both our history and our freedoms. It appears that the town is finding a problem when there is no problem. There are regulations in place, such as setbacks, easements, etc., that if enforced would do away with a need for historical society to monitor our town. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Doug and Dama Afferson, 319 East Moore Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Dane Coker.
My name is Dane Coker. I live at 208 North Lord Street. I thank you for this opportunity and I appreciate your attention. My husband and I chose Southport to be our forever home. We initially fell in love with its beauty and quaintness of the downtown and the parks, the calming breezes as we sit on our porch and visit with those who walk past. But what keeps us here is not so much these things, but its people. We've surrounded ourselves in the comfort of the community feel of Southport, neighbor helping neighbor in good times and bad, a friend on every corner and in between, respect for one another, and at times agreeing to disagree. There are no guarantees in this life, but death and taxes. That's another meeting. No guarantee as to what type homes or buildings we'll see in the future. No guarantees with a quasi-judicial board that other subjective standards or an increase in the overlay will come about if the proposal passes. However, we can guide development. We can guide people in the Southport way. We as the citizens of Southport are all as unique as the houses in which we live. What a treasure that is. Trust us to continue to maintain and improve our properties as a testament to the city we love, to the way of life that we love, and to the respect we have been showing and will continue to show to Southport. We do not need regulations, rules, or a committee to oversee us. Say no to government overreach of the less than 10% of this city's population. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next letter, please.
I respectfully request that the Southport Board of Aldermen vote no to the Historic District Overlay and the appended design standards. Last week's mayor's town hall meeting highlighted that the existing city employees would be administrating this new overlay effort. I believe that the city should recognize these risks. First, I have witnessed noncompliance to the UDO with new construction when the process was followed with special use permits and review boards. I saw ill-defined or shifting city roles and responsibilities, single point failure without review redundancy, ambiguous UDO definition, and inadequate follow-up enforcement. Secondly, there have been multiple enforcement lapses with non-compliant contractor permitting for major residential exterior upgrades. Based on the aforementioned lapse, I have low confidence that the city can fairly and equitably execute the historic district overlay. Any lapse in compliance sets advantageous precedents for the next homeowner or frustrates those who follow the rules. Then a mention was made in the mayor town hall that a single historic board design standard may situationally allowed with the congruency substantiation to adjacent or nearby features. This subjective allowance will surely set precedents that will be hard to defend in the future applications. These risks may become a quagmire ripe with liability for those with funds. The bureaucracy of the board application process may squash well-intended small projects and upgrades for some, and less fortunate may be constrained with these design standards and abandon their efforts. Both are counter to our community objective in increasing its beauty. Simply let us have our enjoyment with home ownership and don't hinder us within the historic overlay. Community pride and social norms will keep us more in line rather than imperfect process within a 100-page design standard. Please vote no. Barry Almond, 212 North Brett Street.
And who's next, Madam Clerk?
Gwen Tanner.
Hi. 3 minutes, huh? My name is Gwen Tanner. I live with my husband, Jamie Deal, at 315 North Caswell Avenue. We are Mad River Construction, and we have lived and worked in Southport for almost 30 years, and over 20 of those years, we've lived in the proposed historic district. Follow me, if you will, over to 317 East Nash Street and 319 East Nash across from the old jail. Then let's go up to 312 North Atlantic and down to 105 South Atlantic, next door to 302 East Moore. How about 301 East Bay, the Brunswick Inn? Let's go across town to 114 West Nash, then to 202 West Nash, 307 West Brunswick, across to 108 North Caswell, and then up to 215 North Caswell, finally home to 315 North Caswell. A dozen homes we built or renovated in the spirit of Southport. Each one historically appropriate, not because we had to comply with a set of rules, but because we wanted to be appropriate and our customers wanted that too. And we're not alone. We're in good company with other builders with similar goals. Wes Cross, Matt Watson, Fred Fiss. We all build what is Southport appropriate because we want it and our customers want it. Sadly, many of those projects would not have been possible under the proposed HPC. The guidelines are simply too restrictive. They don't allow for any practicality or creativity. two things that drew many of us to Southport in the first place. Now, it's clear that those who created this proposal care deeply about preserving historic character and protecting what makes Southport special. On that much we agree, but preservation should not come at the expense of fundamental property rights. So I'm wearing my funny upside down Southport hat because lately it's felt that way. Let's put us back right side up and vote no to the HPC. Thank you.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Fellow citizens, friends, and neighbors, Southport was founded in 1792. For more than 2 centuries, it has survived wars, hurricanes, economic change, and the passage of time. Today, however, it faces a different kind of threat, not destruction from nature, but erosion through unchecked growth. Brunswick County is one of the fastest growing counties in America. Development pressure is enormous, and more is coming. The question before us is not whether Southport will change. Of course it will. The question is whether Southport will remain recognizable Southport. People do not come here because we are the newest town on the coast. They come here because we are one of the oldest. They come for the live oaks, the historic homes, the walkable streets, the maritime atmosphere, and the feeling that this town still possesses a genuine sense of place. Once those things are lost, they cannot be rebuilt. A historic preservation district is not about freezing the town in time. It is not anti-growth, and it is not anti-business. It is about managing growth intelligently so that new development respects the character and scale of the community that already exists. We have many examples showing why this matters. Our neighbor to the north, Beaufort, establishes a 12-block historic district in 1994. By doing so, they maintained their historic waterfront, kept their district architecture, and retained the livable scale of their downtown. Their preservation efforts strengthened tourism, stabilized property values, and reinforced civic identity. Their example showcases how we can have economic development that is intelligent and authentic. Similarly, New Bern and Edenton have adopted historic districts, and as a result, have seen stronger local economies, investment and rehabilitation of older buildings, protection against rampant development, stronger community identity, walkability, and an enhanced quality of civic life. They have attracted new residents involved in and committed to their towns. In Wilmington, the historic district has prompted investment and economic growth in a part of the city that once was at risk. We also have cautionary examples in places where rapid coastal development occurred without adequate protection. Much of the original character disappeared beneath oversized buildings, demolition, congestion, and generic construction. Growth came, but identity was lost. Do we want to resemble Myrtle Beach or Carolina Beach? Southport still has choice. If we act now, we can guide development in a way that protects the town's heritage while still allowing prosperity and investment. If we wait too long, decisions made lot by lot and building by building may permanently change the community we love. Historic preservation is not resisting the future. It is about making sure the future remembers the past. The historic character of Southport is not a barrier to economic success. It is a reason for it. Let's show our support for those who want to ensure Southport's vibrant future by respecting its past. Edward Glenn. Oh, you. Just know I'm trying for everybody.
Who's next? Madam
Bob Gardner.
My name is Bob Gardner. My wife and I live in the historic district at 108 North Caswell Avenue. The problem attempting to be addressed in the proposed district ordinance is the elimination of fear. Fear. That's the express justification to address the improbability that some person arriving in Southport would deliberately build a home which does not fit into the historic character of our town. That has not happened. It's only the personal mission of a few to eliminate this slight improbability. The proposed solution to this is needlessly regulate those existing residences and businesses within the historic district who already are judged as fitting the definition of desired historic character. The proposed process in this is to have a committee of unelected citizens hold judgment over other citizens' property. This is wrong. What's also wrong is that the historic committee and some aldermen are not moved by the clear majority of affected citizens who have spoken out against the regulations. Not listening to the will of the majority of citizens falls short of the trust which was granted to the historic committee and to you, the aldermen. For that reason, last fall, a group hired a lawyer to seek protection under state law referring to as downzoning, which by intention protects citizens' existing property rights from being relinquished to a body of government. A formal letter, November 2025, was sent to the town from our lawyer notifying the town of the state law and the concern of potential infringement. The notification also explained that if the ordinance is approved in conflict with state law, that our lawyer would take legal action to have the ordinance declared illegitimate, triggering the repeal of the ordinance and the town's responsibility for all of our legal costs incurred. Most people here are unaware of this letter. We didn't publicize it. We didn't put it on Facebook or whatever and go to the pilot. But every alderman here is well aware of the legal law and the notification. It would be very disappointing for the Board of Aldermen not to heed the objections of the affected citizens, or worse, not to heed adherence to state law. Thank you very much.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear Mayor Hatem and members of the board, I am writing to express my strong opposition to the proposed historic district regulations currently under consideration by the city of Southport. As a native of Southport whose family's roots run deep in the history of this community, I greatly value the preservation of our city's heritage and character. However, I am equally concerned about regulations that broadly restricts the rights of property owners and grant excessive governmental control over private property. When considering legislation of this nature, it is important to weigh both sides of the issue. Property owners should retain the right to develop and improve their property as they see fit, while reasonable regulations should exist to prevent uses that would cause undue harm to the city or its residents. Common sense protections are appropriate, overly restrictive regulations are not. For example, few would argue that a wholesale livestock auction belongs in Southport's historic district. However, preventing legitimate property improvements or redevelopment simply because of structure falls within a designated district is an entirely different matter. While I understand the city's desire to preserve Southport's charm and history, I also recognize and respect the rights of property owners. Southport's growth and transformation over the years occurred organically, not through burdensome government regulation. The city became a desirable destination for residents and visitors alike because people invested in and improved their properties, contributing to community's natural evolution. As someone who grew up here, I remember a very different Southport. Where the Frying Pan restaurant now stands, there was once an abandoned refrigeration truck with no motor and no wheels that remained there for years. Across the street was a hotel constructed from trailers, complete with a monkey in a cage visible to anyone passing by. There were no thriving restaurants in the area, and the only business that attracted tourists nearby was a shell shop. Traveling toward the Oak Island Bridge, visitors were often greeted by the overwhelming smell of the Pogey factory. Had regulations like these currently being proposed existed decades ago, some of those properties may not have ever been redeveloped, It is entirely possible that many of these outdated structures and uses would still remain today. Southport's beauty and appeal are the result of progress, investment, and reasonable development, not excessive regulation. Creating a blanket ordinance that places broad governmental control over private property is contrary to the independent spirit, rich history, and legacy that have defined Southport. Furthermore, simply designating an area as a historic district does not automatically make every structure within its district. Many homes and businesses within the proposed district were built in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or even more recently. While some structures undoubtedly possess historic significance, many others do not. Consider a homeowner who purchases a ranch-style house. That was from Travis Childs at 106 West Bay Street.
Who's
Bob
next?
Menches. Travis Childs at 106 West Bay Street.
Bob Menches, 406 Clarendon Avenue, just one block outside of the proposed historic overlay, affectionately known as the Snow District, that's slightly north of Brown Street. So I'm here representing those folks. I think I had a really long list of what to talk about, but luckily a lot of people have already said all my words. So I'll just get to what I'm really worried about as someone who doesn't really live in the overlay, and that is creep. There's nothing in the proposed guidelines that prevents the current members or future members of the HPC to decide, hey, let's go to Owens. Let's go down Burrington. Let's maybe go up Lord a couple of blocks. We got some really nice historic churches. We've got some historic playgrounds. We've got an old elementary school that's historic in its own right. Maybe we need to include that. And where does it stop? I think, our home was built in 1923. It's a Dozier house. It's got every right to be in the historic district, just based on that alone. But, for whatever reason, thank goodness we're not in the district right now, but there's nothing saying that can't happen. There's a lot of folks that are affected by that. Could be the same way over the other side of on Moore Street. So I think that's really something that people who don't live in the district really need to pay attention to. The other thing that I don't think anybody's brought up is, that for some reason the board has decided to really take some strange directions. We're right now sort of in the middle of this right-of-way quagmire. Clearly, the citizens of this town saw no purpose in that vote by the aldermen, last year, and yet here we are doing it again. Why are we just continuing shooting ourselves in the head over issues that don't exist? This is another example, just like the right-of-way, of a problem or of a solution looking for a problem. There is no problem. It is, as Bob mentioned, I think, fear. It's just flat fear, and there really is nothing to be afraid of. Look at what's happened. All the homes that have been renovated by our local contractors and handymen that have maintained the character without any guidelines telling them how to do it. And I just think it's a shame that we have to put this on the board. Again, the right-of-way quagmire is still in our face, and now we're going to load up again with something that's dividing the city even more. And that's all I got to say about that. Thanks.
The next letter, Madam Clerk.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this public forum regarding the Historic District Overlay. We reside at 222 East Moore Street, having officially taken residency 8 months ago. Seasoned travelers and homeowners, we have lived in 9 states, having seen and fully experienced a wide variety of living environments, including a traditional and mature non-restrictive neighborhood, a highly restrictive gated HOA development, acreage in the county, a historic neighborhood like what Southport currently is today, and a historic district. We knew what we wanted and sought out Southport for what it currently is. The only common theme we have seen in other historic areas is the same problem we see in Southport. New construction, both commercially and residentially. Sitting through several of these meetings, no one has addressed a critical concern Homeowners insurance. After triple checking with our current insurance agent, we can confirm to you that homeowners insurance rates and levels of coverage will be impacted. This is a fact. Our agency has informed us that should your proposal to create a local historic district be enacted, we will lose our current HOI coverage. There is no argument, and it will certainly impact others in attendance here tonight. What does that mean for us? We're left without coverage from North Carolina Insurance Underwriting Association. On their own website, they refer to themselves as the insurance of last resort. Great news, isn't it? Here's our insurance agent shared that we will face 24% premium increase. Personal property coverage is a 20% decrease. Personal liability coverage, 40% decrease. We sense that folks who live in the proposed overlay, everyone from seventh generation families to newbies like us, are lumped into the same group of people that buy into new housing developments, some of which are created with no meaningful design. Builders care about inventory turnover only. People living in the historic district chose here because they love the soul of downtown, the culture, the history, and the historic architecture from its past. They want to be here, not need to be here. A few months ago, while walking our dogs, we ran across the renderings of the multi-use building being built at 115 South Howe Street. Both my wife and I were stunned and struggled to understand how this could ever be approved for construction. Ever. This is so out of place, and we will detract from historic downtown. Residentially speaking, there are a handful of new construction homes in or near the overlay that belong on Miami Beach. Having worked in Miami for 3 years, we can attest to this. Hearing about the strong desire to keep the charm, character, culture, historic architecture, and value intact as new residents, this is of great concern. If you drove or walked to this meeting tonight, chances are you walked right by our house. No one forced us to do anything to our home, but you can surely see evidence to the contrary. That was John and Heidi Lazinski at 222 East Moore Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Holly Sagala.
Howdy, folks. Holly Sagala, 2435 Lake Ridge Drive. I am a fairly new resident, but I am a fully tax-paying resident. My ideas on people who own property don't have the right to do whatever they want if they live within the community. To think about those around us. But I must say that my prepared remarks really don't matter if someone has lawyers prepared to sue the town if they immediately pass this. So I just like to see so many people getting involved, and I think at least if we all work together, we can come up with solutions. Thank you for your time.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear Mayor and Aldermen, I have lived in Southport for the past 36 years and recently walked all the residential streets in the proposed historic district overlay. The reason I embarked on this walk was that a supporter of the historic overlay district had expressed to me that rich people will come to Southport and build modern homes. Out of the 253 homes I observed, I counted 36 new homes, 101 remodeled homes, having minor to major facelifts, and 116 original homes, having been repaired and spruced up. I saw no evidence of modern construction other than one home located on the Cape Fear River. It seems all the new arrivals over the past 36 years who have built, renovated, or just gave their home a new coat of paint fell in lockstep with the vibe, the culture, and the character of Southport. All the new arrivals who live in the proposed historic district overlay that I observed have already set the standard of quality in renovation, construction, and love for an older home. So why are we establishing a historic overlay district with its regulations, rules and regulations, bureaucratic overreach, and reduction of personal property rights? Must we be subjected to a quasi-judicial panel to obtain permission to make changes to our exterior of our home? The battle cry of this HPC from its infancy has been, we are not going to tell anyone what color they can paint their house. But if you initiate a remodel of your home, the HPC could become a quagmire of standards, tearing up your plans and dreams. If you own property in the proposed historic overlay district, my suggestion is that you read and understand the HPC document. Especially, and I repeat, especially if you own a one-story cottage and plan on adding a second story or removing the cottage and building a new home. Wording in the HPC document requiring your building plans to be congruent or to the surrounding neighborhood may severely restrict your plans for an addition, a second story, or a new structure. All of the families that I know, whether generational or families who have just arrived in the last few years, have picked up the torch of who we are as a community. We do not need a historic commission to tell us how to preserve the city that we cherish and love. Lastly, I would like to remind the board tonight that the call to establish a historic preservation district did not come from the residents of the proposed overlay, but rather the call to establish a historic overlay came from the aldermen's misguided fear that rich people are coming to Southport to build modern homes. Paul Swenson, 706 North Atlantic Avenue.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Larry Ashley.
This is like going on the Gong Show where I know absolutely I'm going to be gonged. Good evening, I'm Larry Ashley and I live at 637 Wild Rose Way. Bear with me, I've been sitting here furiously scribbling out all the comments that I had because I'm hearing the bell go off like crazy and I'm trying to avoid being gonged. So I've just used up 15 seconds telling you that. Anyways, to some I may have a funny accent, but since moving here, I've thrown myself into learning the deep history of Southport and all that it means to live in the special place of salubrious breezes that we call home. I am passionate about it. I also chair the planning board and the cemetery committee. One board looks to the future, while the other board works to preserve the past while meeting current needs. However, tonight, I do not speak on their behalf. These are my views. Let me begin by saying that the intent of a historic district is not to freeze Southport in time as a sort of open-air museum, but to slow the inevitable crawl of time and the changes that future years will inevitably bring to it. In Southport, we're fortunate that for the most part, our homes are not interrupted by the traffic of a variety store or restaurant because they are located where they fit best. The Board of Aldermen, with the help from the planning board and city staff, has put in place ordinances that are there to ensure that we can live and work in harmony and that property uses are the best fit for that area. This is also what planning for the future is all about. Well, while we may hope that we never have another severe storm like we have had in the past, the city has an ongoing project to bury power lines as well as work on the stormwater drainage to prepare for future storms because hope has never proven to be a good plan. Lose my space. For just a moment, if you would, put the thoughts of property rights on pause and look at the historic district from 180 degrees and ask yourself, what's in it for me? How does it protect me? How does it protect my investment? Remember, your property rights don't extend to a neighbor's property. So when somebody in your neighborhood sells, and someday they will because life goes on, and the purchaser doesn't give a hoot about Southport and its history, and unthinkably tears down or drastically remodels a house so that they can build their own vision, who protects you? And I will tell you, I've seen it happen. The planning board can't protect you. We are, rightfully so, unable to create design standards for buildings. We're out of the picture. The city won't be able to either. Voting down a historic district sends that possibility packing. You know, I wanted to mention, somebody said it won't happen here. I lived in a neighborhood where somebody tore down a really nice cape, and what they put up was a large pink stucco Italianate McMansion. So how do we make sure that this doesn't happen here? We can't do it if we don't do this. I read along the way a comment that I believe was made by Bonner Herring, who I don't know, but I do know to be a voice of reason. And it is doing so well.
Madam Clerk, next letter, please.
Dear Aldermen and fellow HPC members, it has been a great honor and privilege to have served on the HPC with you the past 3 years. I will be stepping down as my term is up effective June 30th, 2026, in the hopes that a resident of the Historic District can fill my vacant seat. I want to thank the Aldermen who appointed me, and especially thank all the HPC members I had the privilege of getting to know and working with the past 3 years. Your love and dedication to Southport was apparent. As I leave the HPC, I wanted to say that my wife and I moved to Southport in August of 2019 after our home was built in the Landing. Before we moved in, a member of the Landing HOA called me to say that I could not paint my shutters any color other than white. And they were getting complaints on my house, color selection, and they did not particularly like palm trees. She did not say, welcome, or we could be of help. She and the HOA board sent me a $200 fine for painting my shutters without prior approval. So I paid the fine, bought and had planted 3 additional palm trees in the backyard, and painted my shutters another color. I liked better. I have never had anything to do with the Landing HOA since, except to pay my yearly dues. I did, however, want to serve Southport on the HPC because I knew that I had the background. I majored in history and political science at Ole Miss, graduated 1979. I am a Charlotte native. I have been involved in and spoke at many historical functions and events and been in several organizations over the years. I've traveled extensively in businesses for 40 years, always taking the time to visit historic districts, towns, and to appreciate our nation's history. I was elected town councilman from 1996 to 2003 in Mint Hill, North Carolina, Charlotte suburb. I got beat in my last election by 15 to 20 votes because I voted to keep an I-45 exit ramp closed and not paved because we were afraid a Walmart supercenter would go there. We did not listen to our citizens who were navigating beat up roads and heavy traffic during this construction, especially rush hour, and were fed up with the traffic. The citizens protested our action. We did not listen because we thought we knew better, and I got beat. So Alderman, I know what it's like to sit in your chair and look at our group of angry homeowners. I have been there. I personally leave the HPC very disappointed in that I never got to actually share my ideas to the residents or committee. My sole reason for being on the HPC was to beautify the district, to make residents proud to live there and to be a resident of the historic district. I wanted Southport to have historic district signs similar to Wilmington and other historic districts in the state. I was interested in getting historical plaques for Robert Howe, Wilmington, Robert Howe, the Revolutionary War hero, William Lord, Charles Goss, William Dry, and William Rhett, who captured the gentleman pirate Stede Bonnet, who was from Charleston, along with Isabella Kingsley, who also came from a prominent Charleston family. Much like New Bern and Edenton, I envisioned Southport sharing even more of its fascinating history through signage. That was from Louis A. Towle West III, 6159 River Sound Circle.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Dana Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Dana Hamilton. I live at 114 North Caswell Avenue. I won't restate a lot of things and I'll save time, but I think as I've watched and as we've listened to everything here tonight, everyone has the same intent, whether you're for or against this overlay. We love our town, right? And we want to preserve the historic feel and the quaintness, which tells me we don't need this overlay. It's, as a lot of people said, it's trying to solve a problem that isn't a problem. It doesn't exist. And as a realtor, we see that every single day. People choose Southport because of its history and its feel and quaintness and small town. Nobody wants to change that. And so there is no need for this overlay and for all the problems that it's causing. I also know that if you're scared of new construction, that should be regulated by the UDL. And as James, I think, brought up, we added a detached garage just last year on our property. And no, I have not compared the details that James does, but I'm pretty sure there's lots of things that probably we wouldn't have been able to do. And yet it was designed by someone right here in town. And every single one of our neighbors, every single one have complimented that it looks fabulous and looks like it's always been there and a part of the property. That's what we citizens of Southport do. We don't have to be told.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Please let Southport simply be the same lovely and quirky little town it's always been. Don't mess with its success. Please don't create rules that only apply to a very small percentage of the property owners in this town. If you believe in the standards, they should affect property owner in town. Please stop forcing this. The community is now divided. How sad. Let Southport be Southport, not a cookie cutter development or a gated community. Vote no. Thank you all. Allison Fox, 407 West Brown Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Carl Ward.
Hello, my name's Carl Ward. I live at 231 North Caswell Avenue. Last night, or yesterday afternoon, my wife and I were sitting on our front porch. I looked down West Street. There was 5 houses that have had major renovations done. I looked down Caswell. There's a house that they're renovating. Beside it is a beautiful 2-story house. There used to be a 1-story, run-down, dilapidated house that was torn down, and this beautiful home was put there. Good riddance. Miss Davis, you did some things on your house, and they may or may not could have been done according to the ordinance that we have. And these people, I got twisted up on myself, I'm sorry. But a lot of this work on these houses could not have been done under this ordinance. That front porch that I was sitting on, our house, when we renovated it, couldn't have been done. We moved the front door. I rearranged some windows on the front of the house. Did I do anything wrong? I don't think so. We get compliments on the house all the time. That would have kept us from renovating that house because we changed the front of that house. And Miss Davis, let me get back to you. At a historical meeting, you asked, could you have done the renovations on your house? And you were told that you could. Kind of what I've read says, I don't know if that's a true statement or not. And what upsets me about that is a person that told you this was basically the person running the Historical Preservation Committee. And that's, that should upset everyone. I'm a retired general contractor. Been down here for over 40 years. It's just getting a little bit out of hand with what's going on here. It's not that those 5 houses I talked about earlier, they didn't do anything wrong. They moved a window, did a little addition. None of that would be allowed under this. And as promised, Mr. Mayor, you called me prior to the election seeking my support. You asked for my vote. You said that this had torn the town apart. Oh, well. 3 minutes goes quick.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear Mayor Hatem and members of the Board of Aldermen, I bought a house in what is a proposed Southport Historic District 10 years ago. In that time, I have watched Southport grow and houses throughout Southport within and out of the HBC get built and renovated. And by and large, these renovations and newly built homes have been done in a way that enhances Southport and the charm that is Southport. So it is with confusion and dismay as I watch Southport try to penalize the very people that have taken the time, the money, and the risk to invest in Southport and the very homes that the HPC is purportedly trying to protect. In that vein, this brings up several questions in my mind. One, what are we trying to solve? This seems to be a solution in search of a problem. By everything I have seen, even those in favor of the HPC, buying and investing in what would be the HPC area have done a magnificent job restoring the homes and making a charming cityscape. I can think of several new homes near me that are wonderful additions to the neighborhood, all without the auspices of HPC to govern personal taste of a few to protect the neighborhood. What I have read and heard is that we must have a HPC to protect us from what could happen, what might happen, and if someone were to. But these are all hypothetics versus the real and factual history that people are restoring and beautifying the city and the old homes now and have been throughout the past without the dictates of government. Two, why is the city ignoring the wishes of sizable majority of residents in the proposed HPC who are against the HPC? These are the people that will be affected, that will have to put up with the increased regulations, costs, and hassle of dealing with the HPC. We all know how these develop, good intentions that turn into bureaucratic nightmares, run by a cadre of people essentially dictating their taste to their neighbors. This is especially problematic when you consider that the vast majority of those people don't even live in the HPC. While they can talk about protecting Southport, what in fact they are doing is creating their own personal historic Disneyland at the expense of those actually living in the HPC. Three, since we live in the HPC, since we in the HPC will incur the added cost, insurance, construction, time, and headache of dealing with the regulations of an HPC, is there a proposal to compensate us? Will there be a permanent reduction in our tax rate? Example, we always get a 25% reduced rate relative to the standard tax rate. Will the city pay for our added burden that they are now imposing? It seems essentially that the people not in the HPC will be taking from those in the HPC for their own personal aesthetics. Four, in fact, a most pertinent question is that if an HPC is so good, that was from Scott Fitzgerald at 316 West Moore Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Kathy Cabral.
I just need to work on the heating here. Good evening to the mayor, aldermen, and my fellow Southport residents. My name is Kathy Cabral, and my husband and I live at 308 West Street. At the mayor's town hall last week, it was clear that we all have the same goal of preserving Southport's charm and historic character. Sadly, what divides us is how best to achieve that goal. It's no secret that over the past several years, we homeowners in the proposed historic overlay have been quite vocal in our concerns and ultimately our opposition to the HPC. We are not opposed to preservation. Our opposition stems from the creation of an unelected quasi-judicial body with minority representation by the affected homeowners, creating and imposing a new district and dictating how we are permitted to manage our own properties. There's a question I have. Who will ensure that subjective terms such as appropriateness or historic character are interpreted fairly? Will attorneys be required by the city and an applicant? Further, the imposition of an HPC may result in the exact opposite effect than the one desired, imposing costly regulations on homeowners who are battling high taxes, insurance, utility rates, and overall cost of living may cause them to choose to defer maintenance of their home and property. A slow deterioration, as has occurred in other cities with HPC-like regulations, will not preserve Southport's charm and character. The residents of the proposed district have created a look and feel to this community that every Southport citizen is proud to claim as part of Southport's history. The historic nature of downtown Southport is what drew those of us who purchased property and kept longtime owners here. When we bought our home, it was in dangerous condition from termite damage, knob and tube wiring over newspaper insulation, and a property suffering from neglect. The Meekins, the Delaney's, the Hagers, the Fosburys, the Gardners, the Ballisters, along with many others, have created what the HPC wants to preserve. Most of us were new to the area, but recognized that it held something special. With significant time, work, and investment, we all, quote, set the standard, unquote, according to the HPC vice chair, used by the HPC in coming up with their regulatory framework. The takeaway for all of you: we did it without a quasi-judicial body telling us what to do and how to do it. How does it serve the city to limit the property rights of residents to protect against some unknown future buyer who sees a diamond in the rough and may want to do exactly what we did? I ask all of you who represent us, the citizens of Southport, who elected you, to listen to what we are saying and vote against this.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Good morning or good afternoon. I am writing as a co-owner of the property located at 205 West Moore Street in Southport to express my concerns regarding the proposal to establish a historic preservation society within the town of Southport. While I understand that the intent of this initiative is to preserve the charm, character, and historical identity of our beautiful town, I am concerned that the proposed regulations could impose undue burdens on both current and future property owners within the affected area. The potential loss of personal property rights, coupled with restrictions that may impact property values and limit owners' ability to make decisions regarding their homes, could create significant hardships for residents. I believe that property owners should retain the freedom to manage and improve their properties without excessive governmental or organizational oversight. As the grandson of Mr. Thomas Hoyle Dozier, a lifelong advocate for individual rights and personal responsibility, I am confident that he would have opposed measures that diminish the rights of property owners in our community. Thank you for your time and considerations of my concerns. I am respectfully asking that the interests and rights of the property owners be carefully weighed before any such regulations are adopted. Sincerely, Benjamin H. Dozier, co-owner of 205 West Moore Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Bill Delaney. Thank you.
Mayor, Alderman, my name is William Delaney. We moved here 1985. My dad and I, my late father, we started a land engineering and land surveying company here. I've loved Southport, been here a long, long time. And I'm kind of a steward of Southport boundary lines. As a matter of fact, I don't want to be prideful, but I think I know more about Southport boundary lines than anybody that's living. And so everybody else that knows more is dead. Anyhow, I pulled 2 terms as alderman back in the 90s. Anyhow, for the last quarter of a century, I've been pretty much out of the picture until about 3 years ago an alderman called me up, wanted me to serve on the historical committee. And I told her that I was going to be in favor of people's personal property rights. Okay. Well, she told me that that'd be fine, that she'll call me back as a consultant. Well, I've not heard from her. Well, y'all need to consult. Well, here I am. Y'all need some consultant work. I think probably now. Here I am.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear members of the Board of Aldermen, I have owned property in Brunswick County for the past 50 years and have enjoyed such a great small town atmosphere. Yes, it has grown more than I would have liked, but that's life. I've always admired how the property owners in the downtown area have taken care of their homes and property, making Southport what it is today. These individuals have been good stewards of Southport and Brunswick County. They have used their funds to pay taxes, insurance, and all the other factors and expensive that go into owning property. That said, I am totally against the HBC being a governing body from which we must get permission or guidance before making repairs and or improvements to our own properties. Vernon Ray Martin Jr., 111 South House Street and 113 North House Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Eric Lapala. Thank you.
The one that says, press me on. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I believe Tori provided you a copy of a presentation I had prepared, not knowing that I couldn't make a presentation here. So what I would like to do is just briefly summarize why I prepared that. But first, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it ain't broke. Bert Lance, managed officer under Jimmy Carter. Everybody here tonight has spoken to an organic thing that is Southport. It's all of us. Those of us that live in the neighborhood, who spent time and money and energy to restore it and maintain it, want it to keep it that way. And we will continue to do so. I live on lot number 1 of the first 100 lots this town was laid out on. It was purchased in 1793 for 2 English pounds. And it included the Thompson house in front of me. I live at 215 West Moore, a big yellow house on the corner of Caswell and Moore. The first house was built in 1826. And I went back, the report that I provided you gives a brief history of what we did when we bought that house to restore it to not only the historic standards, but to enhance the general look and feel of the neighborhood. It also helped that I lived between 2 dozers, Roberta and Hoyle. They provided us guidance as we went through the process of what do we do with this house? Those of you that lived here a long time ago, when we bought the house from Toby Thompson in 2007, it had brick on the top front of it. Actually, the first structure that was built did not have brick on it. It had clapboard siding on it. When we bought it, another person that's in this room who I'm no longer married to said, I wonder what's under the brick. So she got a sledgehammer. And guess what? There was a perfectly good clapboard house under it. So what did we do? I provided you with pictures. We tore all the brick off the front of the house. People thought we were crazy. Then we decided we needed a new master bedroom. Well, our builder at the time, another, unfortunately no longer with us, excellent historic preservationist, Jeff Ward, who also did the Robert Rourke Inn, said, you need a new foundation. So we tore the whole back of the house off. That would definitely not be allowed because I needed a new master bedroom upstairs. And I provided you visual evidence in the report I gave you of what would not have been allowed. We couldn't have torn the back of the house down. We moved the front door from the right-hand side of the porch to the left-hand side of the porch. But if you look at the windows we replaced, which are all hurricane-proof windows, they're exact replicas of the original ones that were on the original house. Why did we do that? Because we wanted the look and feel of what was there. I have an irrigation system in the rights of way on the outside of the sidewalk that I pay for, even though it's city property. My point is, it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
We are writing as property owners of 318 East Bay Street to state our opposition to the Southport Historic District Overlay Commission. Having been attracted to the historic charm of Southport, we purchased our first historic property on North Lord Street 29 years ago, moving on to a second and now third home. And for all three, we would have never thought to change the character of those homes, nor significantly alter the landscape. We plan to eventually retire to our current riverfront home, which will require some minimal home improvement, in which we will adhere closely to the original home design, material, and architecture. We do not relish the idea that we would first need to apply for a certificate of approval from a judicial board of commissioners that would not only lead to months of delays, but dictate decisions for our own property just for a few minor improvements. Southport's historic charm, beauty, and character have been maintained for hundreds of years by hundreds of respectful citizens without the need for restrictive rules and guidelines. Thank you for the opportunity to express our concerns. Susan and Everett Moore, 318 East Bay Street.
Okay, who's next, Madam Clerk?
Woody Wilson.
Woody Wilson, live at 502 West Brunswick Street. September of this year, we will have been here for 31 years. So we've been in and out of a lot of these. I recognize the time and energy and effort that the aldermen have put in on this. Y'all are spending dramatic time trying to solve and come up with a decision. What we want to do is help you have a little more information for that decision. And the first lady that spoke tonight, personal preference. I would ask y'all to vote based on your citizens' input and the residents' input that you've seen tonight. There's been a couple of those that are, you can figure out which side I'm on at this stage of the game. But there's been a couple tonight that have been on the other side of the fence, and that's fine and dandy. Probably 98% in here tonight do not want the HPC. And I think y'all need to listen to that. I value when you talk to other constituents in your areas, but you're seeing what's in here tonight and what's come in here tonight. And I think vote your conscience, but let's do the personal preference and not bring in any of the other items that tend to crop up sometimes when we do things like this. We just, and probably the last thing I'll say, I sat at a board of adjustment meeting a couple, maybe 2 months ago. They solved a problem that had been in the making in Southport for 23 years. We don't need another one of those going on. So I would say put it to bed and vote no, and we'll move on with life in Southport. Thank y'all.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
Dear Mayor Hatem and members of the Board of Aldermen, I am writing to express my concern about overregulation in city government, especially as it pertains to the proposed creation of a historic commission. I have been involved in renovating 5 houses in Southport, some of them involving moving the houses to other locations. I also had a subsidiary involvement in saving a historic house belonging to a church. I am sure none of my renovations were perfect, but they all looked like they belonged. I am proud of how many other homeowners in Southport have improved their homes while maintaining the look and feel of Southport. I once thought that a commission was needed, but now I know that giving government too much control is not a good thing. I do not believe that the overwhelming majority of people who reside in or own property in the proposed historic district will continue to respect the history of Southport and build and renovate accordingly. I think if you will ask around among the people affected, the vast majority believe as I do. My wife feels as I do about this matter. I appreciate your willingness to serve the people of Southport and the governance of our city. Respectfully yours, Tommy Harrelson.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Bob Holben.
Good evening. I'm Bob Holden, and I agree with the 80% or more of downtown citizens, the ones here in red. I live at 114 West Moore Street, or as I like to tell visitors, we're 2 doors down from the Christmas house. My wife Carol and I live in the Julius Newton house built in 1886. I've only been here 6 years full time, but my parents moved to Southport some 30 years ago. Our family may not be Newtons, but we have a deep connection and appreciation for the history of this town. And that's really my point. People don't care about Southport's history because a regulation tells them to. They care because they love this place. A couple of years ago, I served as a docent for my sister's house on the historic home tour, proudly telling visitors about James Newton, Sarah Dozier, and their 14 children. That's right, 14 children, which, by the way, is the kind of thing that can happen when there isn't a 102-page regulatory document occupying your evenings. I appreciate the hard work that went into the proposed historic design standards. 4 years of work, countless meetings, community input, but somehow along the way, this effort lost sight of the people who actually live in these homes. I attempted to read the 102-page document, and admittedly, I didn't make it very far, but I did discover something amusing. The section on porches includes a photo of our house as an example. Yet our 2019 porch renovation likely wouldn't be allowed under the proposed rules. In fact, most of our exterior updates like windows, siding, and more would not have been allowed. When I moved on to the section on the exterior siding, I saw the example, there was my neighbor's house. And unless I'm mistaken, that house also wouldn't comply with the proposed rules. It's not every day you find a rule book whose own illustrations appear to violate the rules. Listen, I was an engineer for much of my career. I thrive on creating specifications and defining the world around us. I simply view this initiative as an impossible puzzle that can never be solved. Please stop the madness. You're going to make me run past 3 minutes. My wife and I sit on our front porch often. On a nice afternoon, I'm sure hundreds of people walk by. Oh my goodness.
No, 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 Mr. Holden. Bob. Please finish. It's been so good so far. No, but his is so good, please.
I appreciate that you love my work that went into this.
I'm sorry, Bob. I want to hear you too, but we didn't let other people do it. Mr. Mayor, I think that's out of order.
That's fair. I'll go with that.
That's fine. I apologize for putting you on the spot. That's fine. No, that's fine.
All right.
I don't want to upset him, Bob. I thought yours was entertaining, very good, and I apologize. I put you on the spot.
I'm going to listen to the mayor and too many people that would object if I didn't. Okay, my wife and I sit on our porch often. On a nice afternoon, I'm sure hundreds of people walk by. They stop to admire the house. The feature that gets the most attention, it's our rain chains. Nobody has ever stopped and asked whether those rain chains comply with historic design standards. They simply enjoy them. It's tough to imagine a North Carolina house in the 19th century with rain chains, yet here we are. The beauty of Southport is that citizens invest in their homes because they love this town, not because they're compelled by regulation. I would encourage this board to trust its residents a little more and regulate them a lot less. Thank you.
Thank you. Next letter.
Dear Mayor and members of the Southport Board of Aldermen, I am writing to express that I am opposed to the historic overlay regulations that are proposed for Southport. Like many residents, I appreciate Southport's rich history, unique character, and the importance of preserving the charm of our town. I also appreciate all the efforts by the committee and their desire to preserve the qualities that make our community so special. However, I believe that creating a historic district as proposed would place unnecessary restrictions on the property owners. Property owners should have the freedom to maintain, improve, and modify their homes without subject to additional layers of review and oversight. They should also retain the flexibility to make reasonable decisions regarding renovations and repairs without additional regulatory oversight. Establishing this historic district may increase costs, create permitting burdens, and potentially affect property values and marketability. As mayor and members of the Board of Aldermen, you have a responsibility to represent the interest of all Southport residents and to ensure that local government serves the community without imposing unnecessary restrictions on individual property owners. Mr. Mayor, you have an important leadership role in fostering policies that balance preservation goals with personal property rights, economic vitality, and limited government intrusion. While preserving Southport's history is an important objective, that goal should not come at the expense of a resident's ability to reasonably maintain and improve their own property. Members of the Board of Aldermen, local government is most effective when it protects both the character of the community and the rights of the individuals who call it home. We, the residents, entrust our elected officials to exercise restraint when considering new regulations and to ensure that government oversight is only expanded when there is a clear and compelling public need. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the board to reject the creation of the historic district and support our property owners' flexibility while continuing to honor our community's heritage. Thank you for your time, consideration, and service to the citizens of Southport. Respectfully, Jim Cherico. Oops, God.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Pat Kirkman.
See Brad here. Good thing. It's a good thing. Well, let's change the atmosphere just a little bit, if we can. And I remember saying the last time I stood here, don't make me have to come back. And here I am, 6 months later. But I wanted to be sure tonight that we took the opportunity, at least, to give a little thanks. Not to the good Lord, but to those men and women who have served for the last 3 years and 6 months, and who knows how much longer, on the committee, the Historic Preservation Commission. And Mayor, I believe you're the one who instituted this commission. Is that correct?
I really can't take full credit for that. It was the.
But it was during
when I was
yes,
mayor,
thank
but
you.
we had two aldermen that
Okay,
wanted to start
the
the.
clock is ticking
ad hoc
on me,
committee.
sir.
Yes, ma'am. You're fine.
Thank you. I didn't want to make a misstatement there. But I know in the last 6 months, there's been a whole lot more activity than there was in the 3 years prior to that. when this committee was meeting faithfully every month. And by the way, all the minutes are online if you want to check it. But thank you, Bonnie Bray. Some of you are here tonight. You may not want to be recognized by sight, but I want to recognize you by name. Bonnie started out on the committee from the very beginning. In fact, everybody that is on the committee now has been on the committee for the whole time. Alexis Graves is on this committee. Bonner Herring, Josh McGee, Jim McKee, Joanne Wesson, Tal West, and Catherine Huffam, who started out as a whatever, and is now on it because one of the original members, Rick Canis, went off the committee and she has taken his place. And I want to thank them all. But there's one person I want to say something special about, and that is the chairman of this committee. Thank you, Charles Drew. And all I can say is God bless you.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
We are longtime residents of Southport, with Joe's family going back over 180 years. We are not in favor of the Historic Preservation Commission and their many rules and regulations. We object to the employment of 3 full-time people whose job is to check for code violations. It has been a traditional practice everywhere we have lived that any dramatic code violations are reported by neighbors or the building inspector and addressed that way. It seems that the city wants payments for a 2-step process for any change to your property you wish to make. First, to pass it through the commission for appropriateness, and then to the building inspector. When we bought our property, we did not sign up for what amounts to a restrictive HOA. For the parking right-of-way issue, we have seen heavy parking 3 days a year, 2 in the 4th of July week and 1 in the evening of the boat parade during Christmas holidays. So clearing rights of way for parking is a non-issue for us. We have visited Charleston, South Carolina often enough to see abandoned historic homes rotting because of restrictive historical preservation laws, making renovations unaffordable. Southport is already a tourist attraction without having a regulated historical district. We are visiting relatives in Ohio and just drove through the most desirable neighborhood in town. There are 3 beautiful homes in a row on one of the streets, one brick with a French mansard roof, one a beautiful Victorian, and one a Prairie Frank Lloyd Wright home. How sad it would have been if the Frank Lloyd Wright home would not have been deemed appropriate when it was built. We see how well-maintained homes are in the Southport Historical District area today and see no reason for any changes in the city laws aimed at restricting that area. By the way, just how many commission members live in the historical district? Respectfully submitted, Joe and Marty Laughlin, 410 East Moore Street.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Brian Quinn.
Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. Brian Quinn, live at 316 West Brunswick Street, and I'm opposed to the HBC. I've been in Brunswick County now for about 40 years, working in the real estate development business, construction business. And when I first saw Southport some 45 years ago, I made up my mind I was going to be here. It took me a while to get here, but I did get here. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. When I first came to Southport, I purchased a piece of property at 109 Rhett Street. There was an old abandoned home there that Mother Time had gotten to. There was a tree growing through the living room. Eventually, we did remove the house and replaced it with the building that now is presently standing there. The live oak tree that was there when I purchased the property, which is my main incentive for purchasing, it still stands some 150 years old. Over the years, I've been involved in renovations and remodeling of 3 other homes in the historic district. The last home, Cheryl and I lovingly remodeled, 316 West Brunswick Street. Surprisingly, all the homes that we've completed were without the aid of an HPC. In all cases, I think we did a good job in honoring the historic character of Southport. I only mention the above to show that while many of us who live in the historic district may not be natives to Southport, but we too love and care and respect it just as much as those who came before us. If you haven't already seen the video produced by Bonner Herring showing his family's legacy in Southport, it's a must. You should see it before there is a vote taken. If this does not bring an understanding tear to your eye, then as someone very famous said to me, you need to be on the next bus out of town. The purpose of the HPC is not about preserving history, but increasing government control over private property. It may be considered downzoning, as Mr. Alt said, which is against the law. Southport's history belongs to all of us, but its homes belong to the families who have worked hard to be able to own. Homeowners should not need permission from an unelected commission to enjoy Southport. Thank you very much.
I would have asked you to finish that sentence anyway. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next letter.
Dear members of the Board of Aldermen, I am writing to express my opposition to the Historic Preservation Commission and to any new regulations that would further restrict homeowners from making changes or improvements to their homes in the Historic Overlay District. While preserving the character and history of our community, it is important homeowners should retain the fundamental right to maintain, improve, and adapt their homes to meet their needs as well as their financial realities. Excessive oversight places unnecessary burdens on citizens who already invest significant time and money into maintaining these properties. Owners of historic homes are often the very people who have preserved these homes through decades of care and expenses. Adding more layers of regulation risk, discouraging investment, delaying needed repairs, increasing costs, and creating frustration for residents who simply want to care for the property responsibly. Government should support homeowners, not overregulate them. Expanding restrictions on private property rights can easily become government outreach, especially when decisions about personal property are transferred from homeowners to boards or committees with subjective standards. Citizens should not have to seek approval for reasonable improvements to homes they own and maintain. Our town can honor its history without limiting the freedom of property owners. Voluntary preservation efforts, incentives, education, and cooperation are far more effective approaches than additional band-aids and restrictions. I respectfully urge the board to reject any new regulations that reduce the flexibility of homeowners or expand governmental control over private properties. I urge you to vote no to the HPC. Sincerely, Kathy Rogers, 211 North Caswell Avenue.
Mr. Mayor.
We've been here 2 hours, and I think we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you. right, thank you. All right. All right. So I think we have a consensus of thought here in terms of everyone wants to in some way preserve Southport and its historic character. The method may not be the same, but I believe the sentiment is, and nobody's questioning anyone's affection for our city. I've enjoyed hearing the different remarks, and certainly I think we've all learned a lot. We learn from each other, and I think when we say that there's division, yeah, but it's like 80-20, it looks like. So we're not, there's a consensus that many people that are here, the majority of the people that are here are opposed to HPC. I think we've all heard that. So if there's anyone who has a compelling urge to speak one way or the other, I would like for you to come up, and otherwise we can close the hearing. But if there are people that would like to speak, we'll keep going. It's fine. She would like to speak. Is there anyone else that would hear this like to speak? Why don't you go? Okay, well then we'll continue with the list. All right, let's go, Madam Clerk.
I'm the only one?
You're the next one.
Okay.
You're the next one. Yeah. So
Yeah, under Brian.
I have 20.
There's 20 people left. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of afraid that if you all don't hear from everybody, it won't really sink in. I mean, we've been working on this, and this is big, serious stuff to us. And I'm afraid if you don't listen to those 20, you might forget by next week. And that's when the vote comes. We were told it was coming next Thursday. Joe, Pat, and Noah, the next Alderman meeting. Well, that's what we were told. June 11th. Cheryl Lapala, 316 West Brunswick Street. Brian and I bought our home on the on Brunswick Street 10 years ago. At the time, it seemed very expensive. I'm glad we bought it then because we couldn't afford to buy it now. It was a basic salt box with a ground level front porch. We added a second story porch, and you can see down the alley to the yacht basin. It's the best place in the house, but it would not have been allowed. Regulation 2.5.8, it is not appropriate to add new porches to primary elevations. Exceptions may be considered if you can demonstrate that it is congruous with the historic district. At the last HPC meeting, Alderman Davis asked if her porch would have been allowed to have been added to her house on the second story, and she was told yes, because it was congruent. Well, who defines congruent? It's extremely subjective, and perhaps the answer for her porch may have been yes, but the answer for mine may have been no. And who makes that decision? These standards, they are not flexible. They're rigid, and they are geared towards preserving the front facades of homes. In a Williamsburg type environment with lots of original colonial architecture, this might be suitable, but we're not Williamsburg. Historic district overlays become museums for tourists with an HOA. But what about the people who live here, us? I don't want to live in an HOA, period, and certainly not one telling me I can't add on a porch, but my neighbor can because they're congruent. It's time for us to do away with this mess. We want to go back to chatting with our neighbors about our tomato crop and our potato salad recipes. We don't want to worry about saying, "Mother, may I," to a quasi-judicial commission when we want to change the light fixture on our front porch. Section 1.32 says, make sure your light bulb generates a warm glow. Can you imagine code enforcement driving around looking for bulbs that aren't warm enough?
Taxes and insurance have been increasing steadily. They're going to continue to go up if this goes into place. And the cost of maintenance are higher if we have to replace wood with wood rather than hardy plank and vinyl windows. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, next letter.
Dear Board of Aldermen, as a resident and property owner, I am concerned about the HPC's plan to increase regulations governing, my gosh, changes to homes in the proposed historic overlay district. I respectfully ask the board to consider the impact such restrictions would have on homeowners and to preserve the rights of citizens to make reasonable decisions about their own property. Many of us purchase older homes because we appreciate their charm, history, and character. Owning and maintaining a historic home, however, can be expensive and challenging. We often face unexpected repairs, rising insurance costs, and the need to make improvements that allow our home to remain functional, safe, and energy efficient. The regulations proposed by the HPC may seem well-intentioned, but they will create delays, increase costs, and make it difficult to maintain our properties. Southport's historic character is vital, and it has been preserved largely through the investments and efforts of individual property owners. Homeowners should be treated as partners in preservation rather than burdened with increasing oversight that could make maintaining our homes more difficult. I urge the board to reject the HPC's proposal that would impose new restrictions on homeowners in the historic district who have already done an admirable job in preservation of their homes. Thank you for your service and your consideration and for considering the views of our residents who value both historic preservation and individual property rights. Respectfully, Lynn Meekins, 207 North Caswell Avenue.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Mary Bullard.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. My name is Mary Bullard. I live at 309 East Moore Street with my husband. And we appreciate the opportunity tonight regarding the Historic Preservation Commission. I want to be clear that I support preserving Southport's history and character. Our historic buildings, neighborhoods, and waterfront are an important part of what makes our city special, as previously said. However, I do not believe that continuing support for the Historic Preservation Commission in its current form is the best way to achieve that goal. Property owners already face significant costs and regulations associated with maintaining older structures. Additional oversight by the HPC can create delays, increase expenses, and make it more difficult for homeowners and business owners to make reasonable improvements to their property. In my own case, we have made upgrades to our home and I believe ultimately would have been approved by the commission. But the question is why a homeowner should have to go before a board, justify personal improvements, and wait for approval in order to maintain or improve their own property. That process can feel unnecessary and discouraging, and even when the end result may not be the question. Many residents, especially tonight, feel that this level of oversight begins to cross the line into government overreach into private property decisions. While guidelines can serve a purpose, they should not become so burdensome that they discourage investment, maintenance, or basic property improvements. I'm also concerned about representation within the process. The people most affected by these decisions are the homeowners and the property owners within the historic district. Those who will have to live with these rules every day and bear the financial responsibility of compliance. Any commission making recommendations or decisions about these properties should reflect that reality and ensure those voices are meaningfully represented. As previously stated in an HPC meeting, it was told that this individual said they won't be here in 25 years to have to deal with the current board. Well, guess what? I'll be here. While public, at the same time, a large portion of the support for the current structure appears to come from individuals who do not live within the historic district. While public input is always important, there's difference between offering input and being subject to enforcement. If the overlay were applied to the whole city, it would likely increase community opposition and concern about property rights across Southport. My request tonight is simple. Reconsider the continued structure and authority of the Historic Preservation Commission. Ensure that property rights, local representation, and reasonable oversight are properly balanced. There were, hold on. Southport's history is worth protecting, but so are the rights of the people who live, invest, and maintain their properties. We appreciate your time and your service, but please, I ask you all, listen to the people who put you in here and trusted you, and listen to our vote.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
This letter is respectfully submitted to voice my opposition to the proposed historic district overlay. As it has been repeatedly illustrated, I believe the vast majority of residents and property owners in the district are also opposed. People have been attracted to our beautiful, beloved Southport throughout its 234 years, and it's in my view that major factor in that attraction has been an independent spirit, evidenced in its people and its historic neighborhoods. When I moved into my home in 2001, many houses had a boat or two in the yard, etc. The homes were in varying states of upkeep and no one was bothered. Yet the lure of the town persisted and continued to grow. What we need to preserve is the spirit, not to impose additional restrictions or modifications or improvements. Let's promote the preservation of that beautiful spirit. I believe the approval of the historic district overlay would mark a severe change in Southport. Simply put, a fancy historic district is not who we are. With sincere respect to the board, I request that you deny the proposed historic district overlay. Kay Jolliffe.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Gabriel Lozado.
Gabriel Zotto, 609 North Atlantic. I'm speaking today about my opposition to the committee, specifically as a taxpayer on the hook for Mr. Brady's time, our attorney. Because the HPC is a quasi-judicial body, members are acting as neutral decision makers, similar to judges. I believe this judicial process must be clearly separated from day-to-day city operations or staff influence. Due process requires an impartial decision maker. The legal standard for this impartiality is not actual bias, it is perceived bias. I want to address the potential perceived bias by allowing staff to serve on the appointed board. This is not a condemnation of the chief and his integrity. I have no doubts about that. More so, it's the legal and fiduciary risk that his role on the board presents to this potential committee, to the city, and to its taxpayers. Again, there's no issue with the man. I greatly appreciate his efforts. The issue is whether the board structure itself could create risk or an appearance that could undermine the process. North Carolina's courts have made it clear that even the appearance of bias by a single member of a board can make the entire decision-making process at risk. When active city employees serve in decision-making or leadership roles on quasi-judicial boards, it blurs a critical line between staff and adjudicator. Even if no improper conduct occurs, it creates a situation where the same individual may have operational or enforcement responsibilities tied to the outcome. Or it could be perceived as he is representing the interests of the city rather than serving as an independent decision maker that he should be. Courts have consistently emphasized that a quasi-judicial body must maintain both the reality and the appearance of independence. In practice, the separation between the HPC and city interests is much harder than it sounds. The board reviews utilities, building changes, modifications, site features, as well as access and layouts of structures. These categories can easily intersect with emergency access, placement of equipment, building configuration, and public safety considerations. That overlap only has to exist occasionally to create risk for a potential suit. The law is designated to protect the system's fairness and procedural integrity, not to judge individuals personally. My goal today is to highlight this, if approved. Because in quasi-judicial matters, fairness is not enough. Fairness must be visible without the potential of bias. If perceived bias is used as grounds for a suit, all taxpayers will burden the cost. Thank you for your time and service.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
I live with my husband, Jim, at 209 Short Street, a home that would be in the overlay. There has been a lot of back and forth on this matter, and I thought I might add my voice. We chose Southport because it's a quaint place and the historic homes are vital for that feel. If the committee had limited the scope of their interest to retain the overall feel of the town without delving into fencing, landscaping, and specific materials used for repairs, I would have happily supported them. But they did not, and the term quasi-judicial is not a respectful term to be used for the people in our town who try very hard to maintain the feel of our home. Therefore, I think it would be a good time to vote against what has been written and suggested and go back to the drawing board with a committee that is well representative by homeowners of the historic homes throughout all of Southport. Thank you for your consideration, and please forward this letter to the mayor and aldermen. Sincerely, Peggy Todd.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Bonnie Bray.
Hi. It's been a long night. Bonnie Brave, 515 Quartermaster Drive in Southport. I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission appointed in October 2022. Because I have been there from the beginning, well, actually, let me say tonight, I'm obviously not going to attempt to change anybody's mind, but I am going to use this as an opportunity to set the record straight on a couple of things. I'm in a position to be able to do that because I have been there on the commission all this time, and I know of its history, and I know the standards pretty well. At the time the ordinance was created, which was a unanimous vote by the Board of Aldermen in 2022, there were 5 members of the mayor and aldermen that lived in the historic district, 2 members who did not. The original makeup of the HPC commission all appointed people who had applied, won out over other people that had applied. No, not everybody can be on it. There have been 6 members who live in the district or who have spent their lives here, and 3 members, myself included, who did neither. I've been here 15 years and that hardly qualifies. So I think we can stop any more misinformation about the vast majority of who the commissioners are. And this is not an outside group. These are people born and bred here for the most part. The standards themselves are 100 pages long, okay? 20 pages of those 100 pages are concerned with the standards for residential renovation, not new construction, but remodeling. 20 pages out of 100. The vast majority of the standards themselves are made up with our narratives about Southport's history, its archaeology, our salubrious breezes, everything but the standards practically. There are 5 pages that deal with new residential construction, 2 pages for decks, and all the rest of the standards have to do with commercial properties or disaster preparedness, of which the disaster preparedness doesn't even require a single certificate of appropriateness. Before you even get to the certificates of appropriateness, the COAs, there are 18 categories of routine maintenance that are listed that do not require even a conversation with staff. If you want to do, change a storm, here, just an example. I don't want to run out of time, but it's mailboxes, construction of a new accessory structure less than 144 square feet, alteration, removal of storm windows or doors, landscaping. None of that requires a COA. If I may finish, there are 14 minor additions. Y'all have had a lot of time. Let the other side, please. Okay. Well, we also had an exception. What? Okay. I got to defend staff, and I would encourage people to read the minutes, and you will find that there are no instances of staff being incompetent. They have served us well, and you're not at the dais, Mr. Alder.
Mr. Mayor.
It's time, but
It's
thank
time.
you, Ms. Bray.
It is.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Next letter. Next letter.
My name is Jim Todd. My wife Peggy and I live at 209 Short Street. I will not be at the HPC meeting tomorrow as I will be cheering on the Carolina Hurricanes in Raleigh in the Stanley Cup. I do want to reiterate something I said several months ago during one of the meetings as to where I stand on the ordinance. I do believe that protecting the charm and history of Southport, which for many of us is why we moved here in the first place, is important. However, as written, I do not believe the HPC board is the answer. I believe such board should be more limited in scope and importantly, have more protections for current homeowners that this ordinance would affect. I realize it may sound like I'm trying to have it both ways, and in some ways, perhaps I am, as I appreciate the historical nature of Southport. But given the choice of voting yes for the HPC as currently written versus no, I choose no. Respectfully, Jim Todd, 209 Short Street.
Next, Madam Clerk.
Larry Cabral?
You win. I mean, you have been reading all night long. So anyway, I got the short straw. And here to provide the administrative information. So Larry Cabral, 308 West West. So good evening, Mayor and Aldermen. What you see in front of you is the updated map of the historic overlay. Again, we presented it in one of the first sessions when we started this process. Just as a reminder, the yellow are the churches and the municipal buildings. The green, obviously, is our parks. And you can see plainly the vast majority of the remaining structures are in blue. Those represent residents that are strongly opposed to the HPC. You can see that the majority of that overlay is blue. So first we had the map, then we had the signs in opposition of the HPC, and now we're here in our red shirts to emphasize our solidarity and commitment in opposing this commission. Is there anything else that we need to do? I would like to comment on Ms. Bray. I know that you're saying that the majority of the folks on the commission were from the historic district. Who's on it now? And whether someone's lived here all their life should have no bearing on their ability to dictate to us residents what to do with our property. Now, a subject that was brought up in the latest town hall. There is the fact that during the election campaigns, when asked about the HPC, some folks running for office indicated that they oppose the HPC in its current form. Based on that position, it is a fact that some residents in the proposed historic district voted for those candidates. Since the election, the document has become more draconian because of the requirements of the state. Based on that alone, we would expect that you adhere to your campaign commitments and vote no against it. However, should on June 11th, it was the date that we were given, you vote to support the HPC resolution, we would like anyone who changed their position to publicly explain their vote by either submitting to an interview with a Southport pilot or writing a letter to the editor explaining specifically what changed your mind. Specifically, what in the document made it the best thing for Southport? Or specifically, who changed your mind and why? And what was their argument that persuaded you to disregard your campaign position? Please, no feelings. Oop.
Next letter, Madam Clerk.
All right, this is my last one, and I have been checking my email all day. I mean, every email. So if I missed you, I apologize. It was not because I didn't check. So, but this is my last one. and it was the short one, so I saved it for last. Board of Aldermen, the HPC proposal seems very decisive and not necessary at this point in time. The people in the historic area have taken appropriate care of their properties and don't need any additional layer of bureaucracy to do that. My wife and I are not in favor of the proposal. We are the owners of the Southport Bank Building at 112 East Moore Street. Haler and Robbie Osborne. And I'm done.
Very, very good. Excellent, excellent. Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Susan Holt.
Good evening. My name is Susan Holt and I reside at 307 East Moore Street. It is challenging to be as eloquent as Bonner Herring's reminiscent video regarding his family's history in Southport and their contribution to this town. I wish Bonner was here to hear that right now, but they had to leave. My family history is not as deeply rooted, but having moved here with my family in 1970, Southport is where I call home. My life in Southport has given me deep respect for this community and for the right of its residents to maintain their property without excessive government interference. However, as I reread the April 28, 2026 version of the Historic Preservation Commission District Design Standards, one thing stood out immediately. The repeated use of the words shall and required. The word shall appears 35 times in the document, and that word alone reveals the true nature of the proposal. The word shall is not guidance. It is a command. It means the property owner must comply with no meaningful room for judgment, flexibility, or common sense. The word required, it appears 25 times in the document. That word is equally rigid. It signals obligation, not assistance, and not discretion. By contrast, the word guidance appears only 7 times. Guidance is meant to inform, advise, and assist. Page 4 of the HPC document states, the stated intent of the HPC is to provide guidance. These words are not interchangeable. When a document overwhelmingly relies on shall and required, it is not offering helpful standards, it is imposing control. If the purpose of this document is to truly provide guidance and standards, then its language should reflect that purpose. Instead, the repeated use of shall and required makes clear that this is not a helpful guide for homeowners. It is a regulatory framework designed to dictate what property owners can and cannot do. That is a serious overreach. It limits reasonable choice, ignores practical realities, and shifts historic preservation away from protecting character and toward controlling private property through a rigid set of mandates. For these reasons, I strongly oppose the committee proposal for the HPC. Thank you.
The Notre Dame sweatshirt did not influence me. No, I'm going to tell you, your father used to bring me clippings from the South Bend Sports, and I want to say I have never forgotten that. So thank you, Susan. Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Jim Brown.
Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, I'm Jim Brown. I've lived here for 51 years, and I would not live anywhere else. I do own a house in the historical district at 114 South House Street. It was built in 1873, and I've owned it since 1983. I've read the historical preservation, and I'm in favor of the historic preservation because we need it to maintain the value and integrity of our property. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Debbie Barnes. Bring it on, I'll do it.
Debbie Barnes, 425 West Street. I live in the proposed historic overlay. Our Southport historic area over the last 30 years has grown in its beauty. This is due to renovations and new construction of churches, businesses, and a diversity of homes. It is the people who made this happen, not a historic overlay of regulations. It wasn't needed. It wasn't needed when this was tried before. You still don't need the overlay. You can revise the UDO, but you can do so by encompassing the same historic preservation word found in the standards of congruent into the UDO ordinances. Ask AI. I did. It's allowed. And not only that, it'll help you write the ordinances. So you really don't need to put an overlay on. Take care of the UDO. If your objective is preserving historic homes, the overlay can actually create an adverse effect. There are property owners who would preserve their historic home, but will demolish it and build new if they cannot restore it the way they want to do and that others have already done. North Carolina statute says that the historic home can be demolished. All they have to do is give the city 365 days notice, and that's for the city to find a solution such as moving the home. While an overlay may have good intent, the likely consequences have been proven in other cities to be very bad. I am concerned about homes not being repaired and the beauty of Southport's historic area being deteriorated due to the cost required by the regulations. I am concerned with no longer remaining a neighbors-based community in the historic area. Charleston, Savannah, Beaufort, and many others have lost their community-based neighbors. The people could not afford the increased cost. Homes fell into neglect, and then many sold to investors. And then city laws changed to allow for short-term rentals. Their historic homes are for tourists to stay in rather than neighbors. Really? I have timed that and timed that.
Who's next?
Siegfried Schmidt.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. My name is Siegfried de Smet, 319 West Brunswick Street. I strongly oppose the proposed historic district design standards and quasi-judicial enforcement, and I urge you to reject this proposal. Let me state clearly first, for the record, that I care deeply about the historic downtown of Southport. And like many others, my family and I have invested our time, money, and commitment into preserving, protecting, and improving our historic home. Tonight, the question before you is straightforward. Should the town adopt these standards and police them with quasi-judicial enforcement? You should reject this proposal for three fundamental reasons. First, historic Southport was preserved by homeowners, and those homeowners deserve your trust and respect. The beauty and character of downtown Southport were built, maintained, and improved over generations by residents, not by broad regulatory power. The people who preserved this district should not be rewarded with new restrictions that reduce reasonable control over their own property. Second, these standards are vague, overly restrictive, and likely to increase cost, conflict, and legal risk. After years of development, the proposal still contains unclear language that may invite inconsistent enforcement, delays, disputes, and avoidable litigations. It is likely to increase cost for both homeowners and taxpayers without providing a clear benefit. Third, these standards expand government control without a demonstrated need and do not reflect the concerns of many affected residents as heard tonight. They are divisive, attempt to solve a problem that has not been clearly established, and place additional burdens on the very people who have done the most to preserve Southport's historic character. Please thank the Commission members for their time and effort, but do not adopt these standards and quasi-judicial commission. For these reasons, I respectfully urge you to reject this proposal. Thank you for your consideration.
Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Bert Matthews.
Not here? Okay, who's next?
I think I saw Bonner Herring leave. Just making sure.
Yes.
Ron Hall.
Mr. Hall?
John Bove.
Good evening. My name is John Bove. I live at 305 East West Street. I'm a member of the Southport Planning Board, but I'm speaking tonight as a Southport resident of the proposed historic district. I think it's pretty clear that almost everyone in the room agrees that we want to maintain Southport historic character. I'm concerned if we don't develop an effective historic district, we'll watch the character of Southport slowly erode until one day we realize it's gone. And at that point, we can't bring it back. It's unlikely that a developer will buy an entire city block and develop it. It's more likely that the changes will occur one lot at a time. We've seen this in other cities across North Carolina. I support individual property rights, but we have to understand that our current and future neighbors will also have these rights. A buyer could choose to dramatically renovate or demolish a historical home and construct a glass and concrete McMansion. The neighbors complain, as neighbors do, but they have no recourse. The planning board can't prevent it. The aldermen can't prevent it. If you meet the UDO setbacks and height, you can build this McMansion. That's why I support the proposed historic district. To me, it's the best guardrail we have to keep the character of Southport. I also realize there's no perfect way to create and manage a historic district. I recognize the concern that defining the character of Southport is subjective. But that doesn't mean that the historic district is not worth doing. Don't change Southport. Let Southport change you. That's a slogan. A historic district is a commitment worthy of Southport. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Fred Fiss.
I think I'm all thawed out now. I was turning into a snowman earlier. So tonight I am here with a sad heart. I support the HPC and the historic overlay. I think it is needed. I recognize the effort by some here tonight to derail what I believe is a vitally important tool to preserve the historic fabric of our town. I am deeply disappointed. My heart aches. I want the best for Southport. I believe you all do too. I believe we urgently need a local historic district to prevent further erosion of our character and identity. The CAMA land use plan calls for preservation of our historic character. The comprehensive 2050 plan also calls for preserving our historic fabric. Yet what I continue to hear from the opposition is that we can somehow address these issues without ordinances or protections in place. As I've said before, everyone has good intentions, and I've seen that go south. The opposition to the HPC overlay reminds me of the opposition to the residential conditional zoning a few years ago. At that time, we heard warnings that the sky was falling. Well, conditional residential zoning is now here because of development pressure. And as we can all see, the sky did not fall. The reality is simple. Many new owners, builders, and developers are primarily concerned with the return on their investment. Their involvement in our community may last only a few years before they move on to greener pastures. I've seen that happen. Will their short-term wisdom have made the right choices as they alter their homes or tear them down and build new? I encourage you to reconsider the need for this historic overlay. One day, a resident will stand beside a historic home and ask, how could something like this have been allowed next door? I believe that'll happen if we don't have the overlay. And when that day comes, I'll remember this moment with remorse because it will happen, and my heart aches for that now. As a reminder, the historic guidelines are exactly that, guidelines. I know everybody interprets them as black and white. I'd like to be in peace, please. I'd like to finish my sentence. They allow for exceptions when those exceptions are thoughtful, appropriate, and congruent with the historic fabric and character of our town. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Miss Nancy, are you speaking or not speaking? Is Nancy Houghton? She left, okay. It said not speaking, but I just wanted to verify. Steve Harney?
Good evening. I would like to thank all the aldermen and the mayor. I've been on both sides of the table, and this is a very emotionally charged subject. I reside at 207 Clarendon Avenue. It's in the district. It would be the third historic district that I've lived in. So I am here to strongly oppose the ordinance to create a historic district. I've seen how divisive it is. I look up there, I see the city of Southport was chartered in 1792. It's been around for 234 years without a historic district commission or preservation commission. And you could see, I'm not sure if the percentage is right, but people elected you to hear their voices. So irrespective of your personal opinions on this, I think you have to be very cognizant of the residents and the property owners within the district you're going to create. There's going to be lawsuits. One of the ones I lived in, I actually had to sue the Hysterical District Commission, as we started to call it, as it grew bigger without controls. That you need to be concerned with. I think, as the first woman spoke, it has survived. People come here because of the history. So if it's not broken, as one person said, I don't think you need to try and fix something that isn't broken. I would love to see the community come back together because Southport will survive, but this pits neighbor off neighbor, and it isn't good. I just think that I would love to see a 6-0 vote against this and let it go back. What you've done is inspire people to engage. So let them get together and figure out how to do it voluntarily. Because I haven't studied the law, but clearly this organized group has spoken, has sought legal counsel, and I think there's just more important things for this city to focus on and the aldermen to focus on. So I appreciate the time and effort of the people on the committee for years, but I think it's been pointed out tonight, there's vagueness in it. There's shall is used. There is no thing other than shall. It doesn't say may, right? It says require. So I just think you're heading down a path with government overreach that hasn't been proven that it's necessary. I hear all these outliers if somebody's going to come in. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
That was it.
Like to,
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Then wait a second. I declared this public hearing closed. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you, board. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, city staff, for being here. Thank you, Chief, for being here tonight. And again, thank you all for the care that you show for Southport. And let's continue the conversation together. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. But Alderman Carroll, and second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.